The rain was falling steadily that afternoon, the gray clouds stretching across the sky, casting a dull shadow over the bustling streets of the city. Maya Williams walked along the sidewalk, her thin jacket barely keeping her warm against the chill. She had just finished her shift at the diner and was making her way home. She wasn't used to the cold, not after spending so many years in the warmth of her grandmother's house in Georgia, but New York was different. It was fast, cold, and unforgiving. Maya was no stranger to the feeling of being invisible here, walking through a city full of people who didn't even notice her. But it was all she had. Her grandmother's illness had drained their savings, and Maya had to do everything she could to make ends meet. The constant rush of the city's sounds, cars honking, people shouting seemed to fade as she walked, her mind focused on the small things. The way the rain hit the pavement in rhythmic drops, the distant hum of a car engine. Maya tried not to think about the growing list of things she couldn't afford. Her shift had been long, and the tips had been minimal. She could barely pay for her bus fare back to the tiny apartment she shared with her grandmother. As she passed a fancy restaurant on the corner, Maya saw a man standing outside, pacing. He was tall, dressed in an immaculate suit, and looked out of place, standing under the awning in the rain. Maya recognized him immediately. He was Robert Blackwell, one of the wealthiest men in the city, the owner of a chain of high-end hotels. She had read about him in the papers, seen his face on advertisements. He was a man who didn't even seem to know what it was like to struggle. Robert looked around, frowning as if waiting for someone, before stepping back inside the restaurant. Maya paused for a moment. Something about him had caught her attention. She didn't know why, but there was something about the way he looked like he was caught in his own thoughts, standing alone, waiting for something, or someone. Maya shook her head and continued walking. It wasn't her business. She had enough to worry about. But then, as she walked past the restaurant, she heard a voice calling out, "Excuse me, miss." It was Robert's voice. She turned around, surprised to see him standing in the doorway, looking at her with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Yes?" Maya replied, taking a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. "I know this is strange," Robert said, hesitating for a moment, "but I was wondering, would you like to join me for a meal? I'm afraid I'm waiting for someone, and I don't want to be rude eating alone. It's on me, of course." Maya blinked, taken aback by the unexpected offer. She had heard people talk about Robert Blackwell, but never in a million years had she thought she'd end up speaking to him, let alone being invited to sit down with him. She hesitated, unsure if she should accept. After all, she wasn't one to spend money on meals she couldn't afford, and she certainly didn't belong in a place like this. But something about Robert's invitation seemed genuine, not like the usual charity or pity she was used to. He wasn't looking at her like a poor girl on the street. He was looking at her like she was, a person. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," Robert added quickly, sensing her hesitation. "It's just that I don't often get the chance to talk to someone who doesn't care about my name or my money. I understand if you don't want to." Maya stood there for a moment, the rain lightly falling on her head as she looked up at him. She had seen people like Robert all her life, the wealthy, the powerful. They were always so detached, so far removed from people like her, but something in his eyes made her feel seen, like she mattered for more than just what she could offer. "Okay," she said, surprising herself. "I'll join you." Robert smiled, his eyes softening, and gestured for her to follow him inside. As Maya stepped into the warmth of the restaurant, the sound of the rain outside seemed to disappear. The smell of freshly baked bread and gourmet meals filled the air. She didn't know what to expect from this dinner, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she belonged somewhere. The door closed behind her, sealing her inside a world that, until then, had only existed in her dreams. As Maya followed Robert Blackwell into the restaurant, she was acutely aware of the contrast between her own worn jacket and the sleek, polished world she had just entered. The hostess at the door gave her a polite smile, clearly unsure of whether she belonged. Robert, however, acted as though there was nothing out of the ordinary, gesturing toward a table by the window. "Please, have a seat," he said, pulling out a chair for her. Maya sat down, still feeling the weight of her surroundings. The restaurant's high ceilings and soft, Golden lighting made everything feel distant, as if she had walked into a movie set. The plush velvet seats, the clinking of fine china, and the soft hum of conversations around her only heightened the feeling of being out of place. But Robert's presence seemed to ease her discomfort. He sat across from her, his posture relaxed, yet there was a faint intensity in his gaze, as if he were studying her. "I know this may seem odd," Robert said, breaking the silence, "but I'm not used to having someone in my life who isn't here for the wrong reasons. People are always so interested in my wealth, in what I can do for them. I never really get a chance to just talk, to connect with someone who's not looking at me like I'm just a billionaire." Maya blinked, surprised by his honesty. She had expected him to talk about business, about the usual superficial pleasantries, but instead, he seemed to be searching for something deeper, something real. "I can't imagine what that must be like," Maya said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm not interested in that. I'm just trying to make it by, you know? Every day is the same, trying to scrape together enough to pay the bills, to help my grandmother with her medical costs." She looked down at the table, suddenly feeling vulnerable. She hadn't intended to share such personal details, but there was something about Robert's calm demeanor that made her feel safe, as though he wouldn't judge her for the struggles she faced. Robert leaned back in his chair, his eyes softening. "I understand," he said quietly. "I know what it's like to feel like you're invisible, to feel like no one sees you for who you really are. But that's why I wanted to invite you here, to remind myself that there's more to life than money, more to life than just success and status. I think we've both been living in worlds that are too narrow, too focused on what we don't have, instead of what we could offer." Maya was taken aback by his words. She had never heard someone with so much wealth talk like that. Most of the people she knew only cared about their own success, about climbing higher on the social ladder. But Robert seemed different. There was a rawness to his words that made Maya think he was truly searching for something he couldn't buy. The waiter arrived, interrupting their conversation, and Robert ordered for both of them. Maya wasn't used to dining in such an upscale restaurant, and she felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. But when the waiter placed a steaming bowl of soup in front of her, she noticed Robert watching her with a hint of amusement in his eyes. "It's okay," he said with a chuckle. "You don't have to act like you've been here before. Just enjoy it. Life's too short to worry about appearances." Maya smiled faintly, appreciating his kindness. As they continued their meal, Robert shared stories about his childhood, how his family had started with nothing and how he had worked his way up, eventually building his empire. He wasn't boastful, just matter of fact. Maya found herself fascinated by his stories, but even more so by the vulnerability he was showing. He wasn't the perfect billionaire she had imagined. He was just a man, someone who had worked hard to get to where he was but still struggled with the same emptiness she felt. For the first time in a long while, Maya found herself opening up. She told Robert about her grandmother's illness and how she had put her dreams on hold to care for her. She explained how she had moved to New York to start over, to find a better life, but how the weight of responsibility was slowly wearing her down. Robert listened attentively, never interrupting, his gaze steady and compassionate. "You know," Robert said after a long pause, "I think there's something incredible about the way you carry yourself. Despite everything you've been through, you're still kind. You still see the best in people." Maya looked at him, unsure of how to respond. She had always considered herself a realist, someone who had learned to keep her expectations low to avoid disappointment. But Robert's words made her wonder if there was more to life than just surviving. Maybe there was still room for hope, for something better. As they finished their meal, Robert stood up and smiled at her. "I'm glad you came. I don't know what the future holds, but I feel like meeting you today might be the start of something good." Maya stood as well, feeling a flicker of hope in her chest. She had no idea where this moment would lead, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had something to look forward to. The following week, Maya's life had already started to shift. It was subtle at first, just a few moments of peace in a life that had been anything but. Robert had kept in touch after their dinner, texting her every few days to check in, offering words of encouragement. Maya was surprised by how easy it was to talk to him. It wasn't the usual cold, business-like exchanges she had been used to with people of his caliber. He seemed to genuinely care, and it was unsettling for Maya. She was used to keeping her distance from people with money, especially those who seemed to live in another world altogether. But Robert was different. His texts were thoughtful, and he made her feel as though she wasn't just another person in his long list of contacts. One evening, Maya sat in her small apartment, her grandmother dozing peacefully on the couch. It had been a rough day at work, and Maya felt the usual exhaustion setting in. But then her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Robert. "I know it's short notice, but I wanted to invite you to a charity event this weekend. It's a fundraiser for the children's hospital in the city. I understand if it's not your thing, but I thought you might be interested in coming with me. We could make it a fun night out." Maya stared at the message, her mind racing. A charity event? She had never been to anything like that before. She could already imagine the extravagant dresses, the expensive wine, the people who would look at her like she didn't belong. But there was something about Robert's words that made her hesitate. He wasn't asking her to come to show off, he was just asking her to join him. "I'd love to," she typed back before she could talk herself out of it. "Thank you for thinking of me." The night of the event arrived, and Maya stood in front of her mirror, unsure of what to wear. She didn't have the means to buy an extravagant dress, but she had a simple black one she had worn to a few family gatherings. She did her best to look presentable, smoothing down the fabric and adjusting her hair. When Robert arrived to pick her up, Maya felt a surge of nervousness. He had promised her a fun night out, but she wasn't sure she was ready to step into that world. The charity gala was held at a luxurious hotel downtown, its towering glass windows glistening in the evening light. Maya felt small as they walked through the grand entrance, the sound of the clicking heels and low murmur of conversation filling the air. Robert, looking every bit the part in a sharp suit, walked confidently beside her, but Maya felt every eye on her as they passed. She was out of place. She knew it. As they entered the ballroom, Robert introduced her to several people. They were all polite, but their eyes seemed to flicker over her, as if trying to place her. She could feel the judgment in the air. What was she doing here? She didn't belong. But then something unexpected happened. Robert, who had been so calm and collected, seemed to sense her discomfort. He placed a hand on her back and leaned in slightly, whispering in her ear, "Don't worry, you're not here to impress anyone. You're here because you matter. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." His words were simple, but they had an impact. Maya nodded, her shoulders relaxing. Maybe she didn't have to fit into this world to enjoy it. Maybe just being herself was enough. As the evening went on, Maya began to relax. She laughed with Robert and his friends, who turned out to be kind and easy to talk to. Robert introduced her to a woman named Claire, a philanthropist who ran a nonprofit that supported families in need. Claire was warm and welcoming, making Maya feel like she was more than just a stranger in a fancy dress. For the first time that evening, Maya felt like she belonged. She wasn't just a poor girl from the streets of New York. She was someone who had a voice, who could make a difference. The night continued with speeches and performances, and Robert introduced Maya to a few more people. But when it came time for the auction, Maya found herself standing at the back of the room, watching as people bid on various items. Robert was up front, talking to a few of the event organizers. She could hear bits and pieces of their conversation, but it was when she heard someone mention the children's hospital that her ears perked up. She had grown up around hospitals, visiting her grandmother for treatments, and seeing the struggles that families faced. Maya's heart sank as she thought about the children who would benefit from the donations. She knew she had to do something, but what? As the auctioneer called for bids, Maya turned to Robert. "What if we did something a little different?" she asked, her voice unsure. "What if we don't just donate money? What if we help with something more personal? What if we sponsor a child's treatment for a year?" Robert raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the idea. "You're serious?" Maya nodded. "I want to make a real difference. I don't have a lot of money, but I know this is something I can help with. I want to help a child who needs it." Robert smiled, his eyes lighting up. "I think that's a fantastic idea. Let's make it happen." Maya was surprised at how easily Robert agreed to the idea. She had expected him to push back, to question how it could be done, but he was right there with her, ready to take action. The night ended with Maya and Robert standing together, their decision to sponsor a child's treatment announced to the room. Maya felt a sense of accomplishment that she hadn't felt in a long time. She may not have had the money or the luxury of the other guests, But she had something just as valuable, the desire to make a difference. As they left the event, Robert turned to her and smiled. "You did it," he said. "You made a real impact tonight." Maya couldn't help but smile back. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. The days following the charity event seemed to change something inside Maya. It wasn't just the satisfaction of contributing to the children's hospital that made her feel different. It was the realization that she had made an impact, something tangible. For the first time in years, she felt like she had done something that truly mattered. It wasn't just about getting by or surviving another day. Maya had become part of a cause, part of something bigger than herself. Robert's encouragement had lit a spark in her, one that she couldn't ignore. She found herself thinking more about the ways she could help, the ways she could make a real difference. That's when it hit her, the realization that she didn't have to wait for permission to make a change. The following week, Maya found herself at her grandmother's side, taking a few minutes to reflect on how far she had come. They sat together in the living room, the old armchair creaking as her grandmother shifted in place. "Grandma," Maya said softly, looking over at her grandmother, "I've been thinking about doing something bigger. Maybe I can do more than just scrape by." Her grandmother looked at her with kind eyes, the corners of her mouth lifting into a smile. "Maya, my girl, you've always had a heart full of kindness. You don't need to change who you are to make a difference. You already do." Maya nodded, but she could still feel the weight of uncertainty. The world she had stepped into with Robert was unfamiliar. The world of wealth, power, and influence had always seemed out of reach. She wasn't sure if she could fit into it, or if she belonged. But something about Robert's belief in her gave her the courage to step forward, to trust that maybe she didn't need to fit in. Maybe she just needed to be herself. A few days later, Robert invited Maya to another event, this time a smaller gathering at one of his hotels. The atmosphere was more relaxed, and Maya was relieved to find it wasn't nearly as formal as the gala. As they entered the room, Robert greeted a few familiar faces, and then turned to Maya, offering her a reassuring smile. "I thought we could talk about something that might interest you," he said. Maya raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Robert motioned toward a table with several people seated around it, each deep in conversation. "It's an opportunity, really," he said. "There's a non-profit organization that's been looking for people to join their board. They focus on underprivileged youth, giving them a chance at education and mentorship. They've asked me to get involved, but I think you would be an excellent fit." Maya blinked in surprise. "Me? On a board? But I don't have the qualifications. I'm just someone who's trying to make it by." Robert shook his head. "That's exactly why you'd be a perfect fit. You've got real-life experience, real struggles. That's something the organization needs. You've been where these kids are, and you understand what they need. That's invaluable." Maya felt the weight of his words. The idea of serving on a board seemed so far removed from her reality. She had never seen herself in a position like that. She didn't have a degree from a prestigious school, and she didn't come from a wealthy background. But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. She didn't need to fit into a mold. She just needed to be authentic. "I've never done anything like that," Maya admitted. "I'm not sure if I'm ready." Robert smiled and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "That's the beauty of it. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to have the heart. And I believe you've got that in spades." Maya felt a mixture of nerves and excitement wash over her. The idea of using her experiences to help others felt both daunting and empowering. Could she really make a difference in the lives of these kids? Could she use her story, her struggles, to inspire others? Robert's belief in her was enough to make her believe in herself. That evening, after a few more conversations with Robert and the people at the event, Maya made her decision. She would do it. She would join the board. She would help create opportunities for kids who, like her, needed someone to believe in them. As they walked out of the venue later that night, Robert turned to Maya and smiled. "I knew you'd make the right choice. I'm proud of you." Maya smiled back, the weight of her decision settling into her heart. She wasn't sure where this new path would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of purpose. She wasn't just someone trying to survive anymore. She was someone who could help others thrive. The weeks that followed Maya's decision to join the board were filled with uncertainty and excitement. The first meeting was at Robert's office, a sleek, modern space overlooking the city skyline. Maya had never been in such a high-end office before. Everything about it seemed so polished and professional, from the glass conference table to the large windows framing the city below. As she walked into the room, she could feel her heart racing. She was one of the youngest people in the room, and certainly the one with the least experience. The other members of the board were all successful business people, lawyers, and philanthropists. They were all older, more accomplished, and undoubtedly more familiar with the workings of non-profit organizations. Maya felt a wave of doubt wash over her. What had she gotten herself into? She didn't have a background in business or charity work. She wasn't even sure how to navigate this world of high-profile events and charity galas. But then she remembered Robert's words. You've got real-life experience, real struggles. That's something the organization needs. And for the first time in a while, Maya felt a sense of purpose. She wasn't just here to follow someone else's lead. She was here to make her own mark. As the meeting began, Maya listened closely as the other members discussed strategies, funding, and partnerships. It was clear that they were all very knowledgeable about the work being done, and she felt like a fish out of water. But she kept her focus, reminding herself that this was an opportunity to learn. When it came time for her to speak, Maya felt her palms grow sweaty. She cleared her throat and spoke up, her voice steady but uncertain. I know I'm new to this, but I've been thinking about something. I've seen firsthand how difficult it is for kids growing up in underprivileged neighborhoods, especially those who don't have access to the resources they need to succeed. I think we should focus more on providing mentorship programs, not just financial aid. These kids need someone to look up to, someone who can guide them, who can show them a different way. There was a pause in the room as the others considered her suggestion. Maya's heart was pounding, and she felt herself shrinking back into her chair. But then, to her surprise, one of the senior members of the board, a woman named Claire, nodded in agreement. That's actually a really good point, Maya, Claire said. Mentorship is something we've overlooked. We focus so much on scholarships and financial aid, but sometimes what these kids need most is someone who can be there for them, someone who can help them navigate the challenges they face outside of school. Maya's face flushed with relief. She hadn't expected her idea to be so well received. It felt good to be heard, to know that her experiences, however humble, had something valuable to offer. The conversation shifted, and the board began discussing ways they could implement a mentorship program. Maya listened intently, taking notes and offering suggestions when she felt it was appropriate. For the first time, she felt like she was contributing to something bigger than herself. She wasn't just a bystander in a world she didn't belong to. She was making a real difference. That night, as she sat in her small apartment, Maya reflected on how far she had come. Just a few months ago, she had been struggling to make ends meet, barely able to scrape by. She had been stuck in a cycle of survival, always focused on getting through the next day. But now, she was a part of something that had the power to change lives, something that could help kids like her, who had once felt invisible. The next few months flew by as Maya dove deeper into her work with the board. She spent hours meeting with mentors, organizing events, and speaking with kids who had been through similar struggles. Every moment she spent with them, she realized how much she had to offer. Maya's story, her resilience, her determination, they all made her a powerful advocate for these kids. She wasn't just a volunteer, she was a role model. And as she looked around at the kids she was helping, she saw herself in them. Maya had made it out, and now she had the chance to help others do the same. One day, as she sat in the office reviewing some of the progress reports, Robert called her. Maya, I just wanted to check in, he said. How are you feeling about everything? Maya smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. I feel like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be, she said. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living. I'm making a difference. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Robert spoke again, his voice soft but full of pride. I knew you had it in you, Maya. You're not just doing good work. You're changing lives. Maya leaned back in her chair, taking in his words. She had come so far. And for the first time, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Months had passed since Maya first joined the board of the children's charity, and each day seemed to present new challenges and new opportunities. The mentorship program she had suggested was now in full swing, and Maya was deeply involved in its development. She had become a bridge between the board and the kids. The organization aimed to help. Every week, she spent time with the young people, hearing their stories, offering advice, and helping them navigate the challenges they faced. It was exhausting, but it was also the most fulfilling work she had ever done. Maya was more than just a volunteer now. She was a mentor, a leader, and someone who understood the struggles these kids were facing because she had lived through them herself. One evening, after a particularly busy day of meetings and one-on-one sessions with the kids, Maya sat down in the quiet of her apartment. Her grandmother had gone to bed early, and the city's noise outside felt distant. Maya had just finished reading through a report on the program's progress, and as she reflected on everything she had accomplished, she couldn't help but smile. She had come so far from the girl who had once struggled to make ends meet. She was now helping others overcome the same obstacles she had faced. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living with purpose. But even with all the progress, Maya still had doubts. She had learned to push through those feelings, to remind herself that she was doing meaningful work, but every now and then, the weight of it all would hit her. She wasn't from the world she now moved in. She didn't have the education or the credentials that others did. She didn't come from money, and sometimes, she wondered if the people around her would ever see her as more than just a girl from the streets. Maya's phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Robert. "Maya, I need to talk to you about something important. Can you meet me tomorrow? It's about the next phase of the mentorship program." Maya's heart skipped a beat. Robert had always been supportive, but whenever he asked to meet, it felt like a big deal. She quickly typed back, agreeing to meet him the next afternoon. The next day, Maya arrived at Robert's office, feeling the familiar mix of nerves and excitement. As she stepped into the lobby, the receptionist greeted her with a warm smile and led her into one of the meeting rooms. Robert was already there, waiting for her. His face softened when he saw her, and he stood up to greet her. "Maya, thanks for coming. I have something I want to discuss with you," he said, his tone serious. "I've been thinking about your role in the organization. You've made a real impact, and I want to offer you a larger role in the next phase of the program." Maya felt her pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Robert smiled, but there was a seriousness in his eyes. "I'm proposing that you become the head of the mentorship program. You've already demonstrated that you have the vision and the passion for this work. You know these kids, and they trust you. It's time to take it to the next level." Maya sat back in her chair, her mind racing. The offer was everything she had ever wanted, but it was also terrifying. To lead the program, to be responsible for shaping the future of so many young lives, it was a huge responsibility. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," Maya admitted, her voice shaking. "I've never been in charge of anything like this. I'm not sure I have what it takes." Robert's expression softened. "Maya, you've already proven yourself. You've been doing this work for months, and you've made a real difference. You have the heart, and that's more important than anything else. Leadership doesn't come from titles or degrees. It comes from the ability to inspire others, to lead by example, and that's exactly what you've done." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She had always been the one to doubt herself, to think that she wasn't good enough. But here was Robert, someone who had seen her potential from the beginning, telling her that she was ready. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air. This wasn't just about taking on more responsibility. It was about changing lives, about creating opportunities for kids who had been overlooked by the world. Maya thought about all the young people who had come to her for advice, all the times she had shared her story with them, and how they had looked at her with hope in their eyes. She realized that she could do this. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a leader. "Okay," Maya said, her voice steadier now. "I'll do it. I'll take on the role." Robert's face lit up with a smile, and he stood up, extending his hand. "I knew you would. You're going to do great things, Maya." As she shook his hand, Maya felt a surge of confidence she had never felt before. This was her moment, and she was ready for it. She wasn't just the girl who had come from nothing. She was the woman who had overcome everything, and now, she was going to help others do the same. As Maya took on the role of leading the mentorship program, The first few weeks were filled with a whirlwind of new responsibilities. She had to quickly adapt, coordinating meetings, creating strategies, and managing the relationships between the mentors and the kids. It was overwhelming at times, but Maya had a deep sense of purpose that kept her going. She could see the impact of the program on the young people they were helping, and it fueled her determination. One afternoon, as Maya was going over the program's progress in her office, she received a call from Robert. "Maya," his voice was urgent, yet calm. "I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come to my office?" Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had been in charge of the mentorship program for a while now, and while she felt confident, she knew Robert's meetings always carried weight. She quickly gathered her notes and headed out. When she arrived at Robert's office, the atmosphere was different. He was standing by the window, looking out at the city, his hands clasped behind his back. He turned as Maya entered, and his expression was serious. "There's been an issue," Robert said, motioning for her to sit. Maya took a seat, her nerves kicking in. "What's going on?" "The program has been getting a lot of attention more than we expected. That's a good thing, but it also means some of the bigger donors are pushing for certain changes. They want the program to be more efficient, more corporate. They want to change the structure to fit what they think is going to bring in more money," Robert said, his voice tight. Maya felt her stomach drop. She had worked so hard to make the mentorship program feel personal, authentic. The idea that it could become just another corporate initiative was terrifying to her. "What do they want to change?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They want to implement a standardized, one-size-fits-all approach to the mentorship, which goes against everything we've been doing. They're also pressuring me to bring in corporate sponsors who might want more control over how things are run. We're at a crossroads, and I don't know if we can keep the integrity of the program with these changes." Maya took a deep breath, trying to process what he was saying. She had worked so hard to create a program that put the kids' needs first, that valued the relationships between mentors and mentees. The thought of losing that personal connection made her heart ache. "But we can't just let them take over, can we?" Maya said, her voice gaining strength. "The whole point of this program is that it's different. It's about understanding the kids and their needs, not just churning out numbers and stats for donors." Robert met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and determination. "I know. That's why I'm asking you. I don't know what direction to take. You've been at the heart of this program from the beginning. You know what matters. If anyone can help us stay true to what we've built, it's you." Maya sat back in her chair, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. The future of the program, and the lives of the kids they were helping, were now in her hands. She thought about the kids she had gotten to know over the past few months, their stories, their struggles, their hopes. She couldn't let that be lost to a corporate agenda. She had worked too hard to make this program a safe space for them, a place where they could grow and find themselves without the pressures of the world outside. "We're not going to let them take over," Maya said firmly, her voice steady with conviction. "I'll talk to the board. We'll find a way to keep the program as it is, but also ensure that we can still get the support we need. The kids come first, always." Robert nodded, a look of relief washing over his face. "I knew I could count on you, Maya." Over the next few days, Maya worked tirelessly with Robert, the other board members, and the mentors to devise a plan. They organized a meeting with the larger donors, prepared data to show the success of the mentorship program, and made a compelling case for keeping the personal touch that had made the program so successful. Maya spoke passionately at the meeting, making it clear that the program's integrity was non-negotiable. She stood firm, refusing to compromise on the core values that had driven the success of the program. Slowly, the donors began to see her point. They agreed to let the program maintain its personalized structure, but in exchange, they would commit to providing more funding and support. It wasn't an easy battle, but Maya had won. The program was safe, and it could continue helping the kids without losing what made it special. As Maya walked out of the meeting, her heart was racing, but she couldn't help but smile. She had stood her ground, and it had paid off. Robert was waiting for her outside the conference room. "You did it," he said, a proud smile spreading across his face. "I knew you were the right person for this role." Maya couldn't help but laugh, the tension of the last few days finally easing. "I don't think I could have done it without you," she said. Robert shook his head. You were the one who made it happen. You kept the heart of the program alive. That's what matters. Maya felt a warmth in her chest. She had proven to herself, and to everyone else, that she was more than capable. She wasn't just a girl from the streets anymore. She was a leader, someone who could make a real difference. And now, she was going to continue fighting for the kids who needed her the most. The months that followed the victory over the donors' demands were some of the most fulfilling for Maya. She had proven herself not only as a leader, but as someone who could stand up for what mattered most. The mentorship program continued to thrive, with more mentors coming on board and more young people signing up to receive guidance. Maya was now fully immersed in her role, and while it was still overwhelming at times, the weight of responsibility felt lighter because of the impact she was making. But one afternoon, as Maya sat at her desk, reviewing applications for new mentors, she received a call that would change everything. It was Robert. "Maya, we need to talk. Can you come to my office today?" His voice was calm, but there was an undertone of urgency. Maya's stomach tightened. "Of course. I'll be there soon." When she arrived at Robert's office, she could tell something was off. The usual, confident, easygoing Robert seemed more serious than usual. He motioned for her to sit, and she did, trying to keep her nerves in check. "Maya," he began, "I'm not sure how to tell you this, but it seems that the organization has been hit with some unforeseen challenges. We've lost some of our major funding sources, and without those, we're going to have to make some tough decisions." Maya's heart sank. She had worked so hard to build the program, to make it a success, and now it was in jeopardy. "What does this mean for the program?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It means we might have to scale back," Robert said, his eyes filled with concern. "We might have to reduce the number of mentors, cut back on the activities we offer, or even, in the worst case, shut down some parts of the program. I know this is a huge blow, especially after everything you've done, but we need to come up with a solution fast." Maya sat there, numb. All the progress they had made, all the lives they had touched, it could all slip away. The weight of the situation felt unbearable. She had put so much of herself into this, and the thought of losing it all was almost too much to bear. But then, something inside her shifted. She had been through so much in her life, and this was no different. She couldn't give up now. She wouldn't. "We can't let this happen," Maya said, her voice steadying with each word. "We've built something that matters. I won't let it fall apart." Robert looked at her, his expression a mix of admiration and uncertainty. "I believe you, Maya. But what can we do? We're running out of time, and the donors are pulling back." Maya leaned forward, determination blazing in her eyes. "We need to go to the community. We need to find the people who believe in what we're doing and ask them to help. We can't rely solely on big donors. This program belongs to the people it serves, and it's time they stepped up to help sustain it." Robert nodded, but doubt lingered in his eyes. "It's a bold move, Maya. I'm not sure if we can raise the kind of funds we need through community support alone." Maya didn't back down. "I've seen the impact we've made. I've seen how these kids look up to the mentors. We have the heart, and that's what matters. If we can't get the big donors to step up, we'll show the community why this program matters to them. We'll build a grassroots campaign, get local businesses involved, and connect with the people who will benefit the most. It's not about the money, it's about the people who believe in this mission." Robert's face softened, and he stood up, walking over to Maya's side. "You're right," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You've always known what matters. Let's do it. Let's put our faith in the community, in the people who believe in this program as much as we do." The next few weeks were filled with determination and hard work. Maya, Robert, and the team put together a campaign to raise awareness for the program and gather support. They reached out to local businesses, schools, and families, sharing the stories of the kids who had benefited from the mentorship. Maya even held community meetings, speaking directly to people, explaining why the program was so important, and asking for their help. It wasn't easy. Many of the businesses were hesitant to commit without seeing results, but Maya's passion and commitment were infectious. Slowly, the donations started to come in. Small businesses pledged to support, individuals donated what they could, and soon enough, the community rallied behind the cause. The mentorship program was saved. Not only that, but it was stronger than ever. The donors who had pulled back saw the outpouring of support and began to reconsider their stance. They realized that this program wasn't just about their money. It was about the community that had come together to make it a success. When the program was secure again, Robert called Maya into his office. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You saved the program. You proved that the heart of the community can accomplish what money can't. I knew you were the right person for this." Maya smiled, feeling the weight of the journey lift from her shoulders. "We did it," she corrected him. "We all did it." Robert nodded. "Yes, we did." As Maya walked out of his office that day, she knew one thing for sure: this was just the beginning. She had fought for what mattered, and now she had the support of a community behind her. The mentorship program wasn't just a success, it was a movement. And Maya was at the heart of it, ready to take it even further. As Maya stood in front of the crowd at the annual community gathering, she felt a sense of pride she had never known before. The event was a celebration of everything they had accomplished: the growth of the mentorship program, the relationships forged between mentors and mentees, and the way the community had rallied together to make it all possible. Maya had never imagined that she would be the one standing here, speaking to a room full of people who believed in what she had helped create. A few months ago, she had been uncertain about her place in this world, unsure if she could really make a difference. But now, as she looked out over the sea of faces in the room, business owners, parents, volunteers, and mentors, she knew that she had found her purpose. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Maya began, her voice steady and confident. "A year ago, we weren't sure what the future would hold for this program. We were uncertain if it could survive. But because of each of you, because of the belief, the dedication, and the love you've put into this program is stronger than ever." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The room was silent, everyone hanging on to her every word. "We've built something incredible, something that goes beyond money or numbers. We've created a space where young people can find their way, where they can dream big and know that they're not alone. We've shown them that their story isn't over, it's just beginning." Maya's eyes scanned the room, catching the eyes of several mentors and students. She saw the smiles, the nods of encouragement. She saw the hope that had blossomed in their hearts, the same hope that had been sparked in her own life. "But we can't stop here," Maya continued. "We've made incredible strides, but there are still so many kids out there who need us. There are so many who still don't have the guidance they deserve. This is just the beginning. We're going to take this program to new heights. We're going to expand it, reach more kids, and bring in more mentors. We're going to make sure that every young person who needs a hand up gets one." The crowd erupted in applause, and Maya couldn't help but smile. She felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. It wasn't just the applause that meant something to her. It was the collective energy of the room, the feeling that they were all in this together, working towards something that was bigger than any one person. As the evening wore on, Maya found herself speaking to more people, answering questions about the future of the program, and sharing her vision for what was to come. But even with all the excitement, there was a nagging feeling in the back of her mind. She had worked so hard to get to this point, but she knew that there would always be challenges ahead. There would always be those who doubted her, who questioned whether someone like her could really make a lasting impact. But Maya had learned something valuable over the past year. She had learned that she didn't have to prove anything to anyone. The work spoke for itself. The kids she had mentored, the relationships she had built, they were proof of her commitment. She had already changed lives, and that was all that mattered. Later that evening, Robert pulled her aside. He was smiling, his eyes full of pride. "You did it, Maya," he said, clapping her on the shoulder. "You've brought this community together. You've made it stronger." Maya smiled back at him. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Robert shook his head. "You always had it in you. You just needed to see it." Maya nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment and peace. She had come a long way from the girl who had once been uncertain of her place in the world. Now, she was the one leading the charge, helping others to find their way. She wasn't just a survivor anymore, she was a force for change. As the night came to a close, Maya stepped outside into the cool evening air, taking a deep breath. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and she could hear the sounds of people laughing and talking inside the building. She looked around at the community that had embraced her, that had believed in her. She had found her place. She had found her purpose. And as she looked up at the stars above, She knew that the journey was just beginning. There were still so many kids out there who needed her help, and she was ready to give it. With the community by her side, Maya knew they could do anything. The future was bright, and it was hers to shape. As Maya sat in her office late one evening, the weight of the decision ahead of her pressed down on her. The mentorship program had grown, and the community had rallied behind it. But now there was a new challenge. The city was considering cutting funding to several programs, including hers. Maya had seen it coming. She had always known that the road to success wasn't going to be easy. But now, faced with the very real possibility of losing everything she had worked so hard to build, she felt a sense of dread she hadn't experienced before. She couldn't allow it to happen. The kids they were helping, the mentors who believed in her, she couldn't let them down. She thought back to her first days with the program, when she had no idea how much of an impact she could make. She had felt like an outsider, unsure of her place in a world so different from the one she grew up in. But now, she was the one people turned to for guidance, for leadership, and she wasn't about to let that slip away. Maya knew she had to act fast. She reached for her phone and called Robert. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady, but with an edge of urgency. "The city's cutting funding, and I need your help." Robert answered almost immediately. "I know. I've heard about it, but we're not going down without a fight. What do you need?" "We need to show them that this program matters," Maya replied, her determination rising. "We need to show them how much we've achieved and how much more we can do with the right support." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You've already done that, Maya, but if you're asking for more, then we're going to give them everything we've got. We'll get the community behind us, we'll gather the success stories, and we'll make them see the value in this program." Maya felt a surge of relief. Robert was right together. They could make a difference. But she knew it wasn't just about fighting for money. It was about fighting for the kids who relied on them, for the mentors who gave their time and energy, for the community that had become their backbone. The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and planning. Maya worked with Robert and the team to gather data, to reach out to the mentors and mentees, and to create a powerful presentation that would prove just how important the program was. She knew it wasn't going to be easy. They had to convince the city council, the donors, and the public that the program was worth saving. But Maya was determined. She couldn't back down now. The day of the presentation arrived, and Maya stood in front of the city council, her hands gripping the podium as she looked out at the room of officials and donors. The weight of the moment was almost too much to bear. But she knew this was her chance to make a difference, to show everyone that the program was more than just a charity, it was a lifeline. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today," Maya began, her voice strong and clear. "I'm here to tell you why this mentorship program is worth saving. I'm not here to ask for handouts. I'm here to show you what we've accomplished, what we can still accomplish, and why we need your support." She paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "This program has changed lives. We've seen kids who were ready to give up, who didn't see a future for themselves, find hope. We've seen them go from failing in school to becoming leaders in their community. We've seen mentors give their time and energy to help these kids, not because they're getting paid, but because they believe in the difference we're making." Maya's eyes scanned the room, meeting the gaze of the council members and the donors. She could feel their skepticism, but she could also feel their curiosity. "We're not asking for a handout. We're asking for an investment," she continued. "An investment in the future of these kids, in the future of our community. We've shown what we can do with limited resources. Imagine what we could do with the support we deserve." As Maya spoke, she saw the shift in the room. The skepticism was still there, but it was fading. The council members were listening, and the donors were starting to nod in agreement. This wasn't just about saving a program. This was about something bigger. This was about investing in the future. Maya finished her presentation with a simple, heartfelt plea. "I believe in these kids. I believe in this program. And I believe that with your support, we can do even more. We can change even more lives." The room was silent for a moment before the applause began, slowly, at first, and then louder as more people joined in. Maya felt her chest tighten with emotion. She had done it. They had done it. The program was saved. The council agreed to continue funding the program, and the donors pledged their support. Maya walked out of the room, her heart racing with a mixture of relief and pride. She had fought for what mattered, and she had won. As she stepped outside into the fresh air, Robert was waiting for her. "You did it," he said, his voice full of admiration. "You saved the program." Maya smiled, a feeling of warmth spreading through her. "We saved it," she corrected him. "We all did it together," and as she looked out over the city, Maya knew that this was only the beginning. The future was bright, and with the community behind her, she was ready to face whatever came next. As Maya sat in her office the following week, the weight of everything she had fought for seemed to finally settle in. The mentorship program was secure, and the future was looking brighter than ever. But even in the midst of success, there was something tugging at her heart. There were still so many kids out there who needed her help, and she felt an unshakable desire to reach even more of them. Maya had always known that the work she was doing wasn't just about providing guidance, it was about offering hope. It was about showing kids who felt invisible that they mattered, that their dreams were possible. But now, standing at the center of a thriving program, she realized that she had the power to do even more. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Robert. "Maya, I need to see you. It's about the next phase of the program." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what was coming, but she knew that when Robert called, it was never just a casual chat. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said, trying to push the anxiety aside. When Maya arrived at Robert's office, she found him standing by the window, looking out at the city. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by an intensity she hadn't seen before. "Maya," he said, turning to face her, "I've been thinking. We've reached a point where we need to expand the program, but I don't want to do it halfway. If we're going to help more kids, we need to make a bigger impact. We need to take this beyond just mentoring. Let's create a full-scale community development initiative." Maya's mind raced. She had never imagined going this far, but Robert's words lit a fire in her. She had always believed in the power of mentorship, but now she was being asked to think bigger, to think beyond the program, and to create something that could truly transform communities. "What do you mean by community development initiative?" Maya asked, her voice steady but full of curiosity. "I'm talking about a comprehensive approach," Robert explained. "We need to provide more than just mentorship. We need to offer resources, job training, mental health support, housing assistance, and more. We're already doing great things, but if we really want to make a lasting change, we have to build a network of support that addresses all aspects of these kids' lives." Maya felt a rush of excitement mixed with uncertainty. The idea of expanding so quickly was both thrilling and daunting, but as she thought about the kids they had helped so far, she knew that this was the right path. She couldn't just help them with their schoolwork or their career goals. She had to help them with everything because their struggles went beyond the classroom. "You're right," Maya said, her voice gaining confidence. "We can't just focus on one part of their lives. They need support in every way, financial, emotional, physical. If we want to break the cycle of poverty and hopelessness, we have to be there for them in every aspect of their journey." Robert smiled, clearly pleased with her response. "Exactly. We're in this together, and I know we can make it happen, but we'll need the community's support to pull it off. We need to bring in local businesses, government partners, nonprofits. The whole city needs to be involved." Maya nodded, already thinking about the steps they would need to take. The first thing that came to mind was a public awareness campaign. She would need to gather the stories of the kids who had already benefited from the mentorship program and share those stories with the community. She would need to show them the faces of the people who were being helped, the families whose lives had been changed. Robert had always said that people needed to see the impact before they could truly believe in it. And now, more than ever, that was the key. Over the next few weeks, Maya worked tirelessly, reaching out to local businesses, organizing community events, and connecting with government officials who could help secure funding for the new initiative. She met with mentors, volunteers, and families, listening to their stories and getting their feedback on what was needed most. As the campaign gained momentum, Maya felt her confidence growing. She was no longer just someone fighting to keep a program afloat. She was a leader, shaping a vision for something that could change the course of so many lives. The community's response was overwhelming. People began to show up at events, donate resources, and offer their support. Local businesses pledged to provide job training programs, and schools offered to partner in providing educational support. The city government even agreed to help secure funding for the initiative, seeing the potential for a city-wide transformation. With the community rallying behind them, Maya and Robert launched the full-scale initiative, which included mentorship, job training, mental health resources, and more. The results were nothing short of extraordinary. Within months, the lives of countless young people began to change. They found jobs, started new businesses, and broke the cycles of poverty that had trapped their families for generations. And through it all, Maya remained at the heart of it. She had proven, not only to herself but to everyone who had doubted her, that she could do more than survive. She could lead, she could inspire, and she could change the world. As Maya stood at the podium at the initiative's first major event, watching the community come together in celebration, she realized just how far she had come. She had once been an outsider, unsure of her place. But now, she was a force for change. And the best part was, she wasn't done yet. The journey was just beginning. Months passed, and the Community Development Initiative was flourishing beyond anyone's expectations. Maya had worked tirelessly alongside Robert and the community to turn their vision into reality. What started as a small mentorship program had blossomed into a full-scale initiative that provided holistic support to young people, offering everything from job training and housing assistance to mental health services. The impact was undeniable. The once overlooked neighborhoods were now filled with a sense of possibility. The young people who had once felt trapped were now finding new paths forward. Maya couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of pride when she looked back at how far they had come. But as the program grew, so did the challenges. Maya knew that they had achieved something monumental, but she also understood that success brought its own set of obstacles. There were always new hurdles to overcome: funding issues, scaling the initiative to meet increasing demand, and navigating the political landscape. And yet, despite the pressure, Maya felt more determined than ever. One afternoon, as Maya was reviewing some reports in her office, Robert called her. "Maya, we need to talk," he said, his voice carrying an undertone of concern. "I've received some news from the city council. It looks like there's another round of budget cuts, and they've decided to target social programs like ours. We might be at risk of losing funding again." Maya's heart sank. She had just gotten the initiative on solid ground, and now the very thing that had helped it grow the financial support was in jeopardy again. "What are we going to do?" she asked, trying to keep the panic from creeping into her voice. Robert was silent for a moment before answering. "We need to fight for it, just like we did before. We've shown them how much impact we've made. We have to prove again that we're worth the investment." Maya stood up, pacing the room as she thought about the next steps. She had worked too hard, and the community had come too far to let this slip away. The kids they helped, the mentors who had poured their hearts into the program, they all depended on this initiative. She wasn't going to let it be taken from them. "We can't wait around for them to decide our fate. We need to take action. We need to bring in the community again, show them the faces of the people who benefit from what we do. If we show them what's at stake, they'll have no choice but to support us." Robert agreed, and they quickly set to work, organizing a public campaign to bring attention to the issue. Maya knew that this time, it wasn't just about making a case for the program, it was about inspiring the community to rally around the cause once more. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings and brainstorming sessions. Maya reached out to local media outlets, organized rallies, and connected with influential community leaders. She made sure to highlight the success stories of the kids who had come through the program, showcasing the real-life changes that had been made possible. As the campaign picked up steam, Maya began to feel a familiar sense of hope. The community was behind them once again, and their voices were louder than ever. People were showing up at city council meetings, signing petitions, and calling their representatives. It was clear that this was more than just a program, it was a movement. The council members couldn't ignore the wave of support. Maya stood in front of the council once more, this time with an even larger group of supporters behind her. The room was filled with passionate voices, all demanding that the initiative be saved. As she addressed the council, Maya felt a surge of emotion. She wasn't just speaking for the program anymore, she was speaking for the future of so many young people who had no other chance. "We are not asking for a handout," Maya said, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "We are asking for the opportunity to continue doing what we've been doing." We've proven that we can make a difference. We've shown you what happens when you invest in these kids. They don't just survive, they thrive. And when they thrive, the whole community benefits. The council members were visibly moved. There was no denying the impact of the program, and the energy in the room was palpable. Maya's heart raced as she finished her speech. This is not just a program. This is a chance for a better future for everyone. We cannot afford to lose it. The room erupted in applause, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Maya felt a sense of relief. The council voted overwhelmingly to continue funding the initiative, and the community celebrated their victory. It wasn't just the program that had been saved, it was the hope for a brighter future. As Maya walked out of the council chambers, Robert caught up with her. "You did it," he said, his voice full of admiration. "We did it," Maya replied, a smile spreading across her face. She had faced every obstacle that had come her way, and she had fought for what mattered most. This was her purpose, and she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would continue to fight, because the work they were doing had the power to change lives. Maya wasn't just leading a program, she was leading a movement, and there was no stopping it now. As the years passed, Maya's program had transformed not only the lives of the young people it served, but the entire community. The initiative had grown far beyond what Maya had ever imagined when she first started. What had once been a small mentorship program was now a fully integrated community development initiative, offering everything from career development to mental health services to family support. Maya had witnessed firsthand the incredible changes it had brought about. The kids who once felt invisible now had opportunities they never thought possible. Mentors who had once offered their time out of goodwill were now empowered to make a lasting difference in their communities. But the growth had not come without its challenges. Maya had faced setbacks, doubters, and many long nights when she wondered if it was all worth it. Yet, every time she looked at the success stories, the young people who had been given a second chance at life, she knew that every moment of doubt had been worth it. Now, as she sat at the head of the program's board meeting, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. Robert, who had always been by her side, was sitting across from her, smiling with pride. "I think it's safe to say we've come a long way," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Maya smiled back at him. "We've come a long way, yes. But there's still so much more to do." Her mind was already racing with new ideas, new ways to expand the program, new ways to reach even more young people. "What's next for us?" Robert asked, sensing the same energy in her. Maya paused, looking out the window at the city skyline. The future seemed wide open. They had made a lasting impact, but Maya knew the work would never be truly finished. "Next," she said, her voice full of determination, "we continue to grow. We expand our reach to even more communities. We create more partnerships, and we make sure that every child in need gets a chance to thrive. We've built something that works. Now, we need to make sure it lasts." Robert nodded in agreement. "You've always had that vision, Maya, and it's because of that vision that we've come this far." Maya turned her attention back to the board members gathered around the table. They were all looking at her, waiting for her next move, for the next phase in the program's growth. Maya felt a surge of gratitude. These were the people who had stood by her from the beginning, who had believed in her vision, who had helped bring it to life. "We've built this together," Maya said, her voice filled with emotion. "But it's not just about the program. It's about the people we serve. It's about the kids whose lives we've changed. It's about the mentors who've given their time, the families who've supported them. Together, we've created something that will continue to make a difference long after we're gone." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. And then, slowly, the applause began. The board members, the mentors, and everyone who had been a part of the journey began to clap, not just for the success of the program, but for the vision, the determination, and the heart that had driven it all. Maya's eyes welled up with tears. She had done it. She had created something that would last, something that would continue to change lives, but she knew that the work was far from over. There were still kids out there who needed help, still communities that needed support. There was always more to be done. But for the first time in a long time, Maya felt a sense of peace. She had found her purpose, and that purpose was bigger than anything she could have imagined. As the applause died down, Maya stood up, smiling at the room of people who had helped her make her dream a reality. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me, for believing in this program. But most of all, thank you for believing in these kids. We've made a difference, and we will continue to make a difference, together." The room erupted into applause once again, and Maya felt the warmth of the moment wash over her. She wasn't just the leader of a successful program, she was part of a movement that would continue to change lives, one person at a time. As she looked out over the room, at the faces of the people who had stood by her through every challenge and every triumph, she knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The future was wide open, and Maya was ready to face it, knowing that with the support of the community behind her, there was nothing they couldn't accomplish. She had come so far from the girl who had once doubted herself. Now, she was a leader, an inspiration, and most importantly, a catalyst for change. She was exactly where she was meant to be. In this inspiring story of resilience and determination, a young woman rises from humble beginnings to lead a transformative mentorship program that helps underprivileged youth. The journey is filled with obstacles, including funding cuts and community skepticism, but through sheer will and support from the community, she builds an initiative that impacts lives and creates lasting change. As Maya faces challenges, her commitment to the Black stories she mentors strengthens her resolve, reminding her that these young lives deserve the chance to thrive. Through her leadership, Maya not only saves the program but also expands it, creating a full-scale community development initiative that supports youth in all aspects of life, from job training to mental health resources. The Black stories she champions become the foundation for a movement, and the people Maya helps become a powerful testament to what determination and community support can achieve. This story, like many Black stories, highlights the importance of mentorship, leadership, and the courage to fight for what is right. As the program grows, Maya knows the work is far from over, but with each success, she changes lives, proving that the power of community and persistence can overcome any challenge. These Black stories will continue to inspire and transform the future, one life at a time.